This one's from Nabruik from last week. We didn't get a chance to do it. I think it came in during the show. But he says, or they say, how do you balance tactical combat and story-driven encounters? Just had a guy quit a D&D 5e game because he didn't like how we ran the tactical initiative order or combat encounters. He felt that they should be handled through dialogue with little or no use of the initiative order. So have you encountered this stuff before? Cliff, we'll start with you. Like a two-part question, right? Have you encountered people who get upset about sort of non-cinematic combat or not? And if you did, how do you balance the nitty-gritty tactical stuff with, a more cinematic or story-driven combat encounter?
Well, as a GM, I like to make sure that everyone present has the opportunity to engage with the game. I don't try to force them to, but I mean, I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to do something, has the opportunity. Oftentimes that means people take their turns, right? We're just talking about in Cyberpunk, we have the hacker takes their special game, and then the combat people, they have their game. And there's a lot of times when not everyone can really be involved in taking the center stage on what sort of situation is happening because it's social or technical or combat. So I think it's important to balance opportunities for players to engage meaningfully with the story. But I don't worry so much about balancing tactical versus story-driven encounters because it's really up to the players what a lot of that stuff turns into. I think if I were to take this description you said at maybe the best possible interpretation for the person who got upset and left because they didn't like how it was handled, maybe they were trying to resolve combat encounters that were in the adventure as a combat encounter with social skills or some sort of clever thing, and like everything they do just got shot down. Yeah, that would suck. But I mean, if they just wanted to never roll initiative and not let the people who want to do this tactical combat fun have their fun, then that's no good. So
yeah, I mean, it is very important to note that, right? Because if he from how this is phrased, right? Because we don't know how this dynamic was, but like it seemed like because he didn't want to roll initiative and because he didn't want to he just wanted to kind of do that cinematic style, and he just decided to leave. And I'm like, well, then D&D 5e is probably not the game for you. I mean, I'm sorry, like I can understand that you can make it more cinematic or less. There's like a scale that you can use, I think, but it also undermines a lot of the mechanics. Like all these people who had to read pages upon pages upon pages of like stats and spells and game effects and all that, and like build them into their character, and then they don't get to use them because you want to play more loosey-goosey. I'm sorry, just play a different game.
Let me ask this. I have heard people refer to the Critical Role effect. Haven't seen much, if any, of Critical Role, but do they do things a little bit more cinematic? Or do they play things pretty much by the book?
They play by the book. They just have a lot of like naturally narrative flair added onto all of it. But yeah, they still play by the rules. I don't see them really bend.
So if that's the case, I'm wondering, and that was the only thing I could think of for why somebody would come into a D&D game with that attitude. like where did you get idea that that's supposed to be how it goes, right?
I don't think we're getting a very good representation of their perspective.
Sure.
I think there's more to it. I think if people just want the game to be played just the way they want to play it the whole time, well, I'm not sure if any role-playing game is right for them. But I'm not sure if anybody's really totally like that.
Right.
It's more likely that there are some other underlying conflicts or problems besides just the balance of combat versus narrative storytelling.
Yeah, and I've had that at a the reverse thing actually when I started a Shadowrun 4E game with some of my buddies a few years ago, and everybody was really cool, like role playing and doing a bunch of like cool stuff and like avoiding combat as much as possible. But I had one guy who built his adept to be like a swords master who wants to prove himself in combat. And so all he wanted to do is have one fight every time where he could just challenge himself against, the biggest, baddest opponent. And every time the group decided like, no, we can avoid this combat, he got visibly upset like that there's not going to be any combat in this.
Yeah,
So
I think as a GM, I would really just want to find some way to throw them in extra combat somehow that,
right.
I don't know. Even if it just comes down to like just out of character saying, all right, come on guys, this is you've done all the clever, sneaky and social stuff. This guy wants to use his sword. Don't frag this up for him. I mean, I think it's okay to step back and say that, all right? Because this guy needs a sword fight. Let's make sure he gets a sword fight.
Yeah, but you know what the thing is though, like that idea of I am the combat guy and I am the talking person and I am the this, that, and that, I'm the hacking person. What that does is that starts segmenting people into like their own separate, mini games is a term that you used, right? Where everyone's just kind of, this is the part that's supposed to be for me. But then the problem is, as a collaborative group, you're all making decisions toward what the most effective use of the entire group is. And if it's not you, even though this would on the surface be your thing, I mean, sorry, like, not that I think that that's okay, right?
Sure.
You should never segment yourself in that way where you are only that. But I think that mindset is part of the solo video game RPG experience, right? Where like, I am this role on this team, or I am this person. This is how I solve problems, and I want the game catered to me. No. That's not going to happen. So you need to
I do think there's room for all of that, but I think the most rewarding experience is as you describe, Oz, when you don't just build 5 different silos, right, of skills. I think whenever, like, you remember in Leverage, right? I don't know if you guys have seen this, right? Leverage, the
I've
TV
seen,
show.
yes.
But like in the first episode, right? Like you have people who are only good in one very particular thing. By the end of the series, they are all trying each other's roles out, right? And like doing really fine at them, right? So I think that's probably, well, I don't know exactly what I'm saying there, but I do think it's more fun when you have multiple people doing multiple things as a group versus just the silo mentality.
I super rarely make a Shadowrun character that is only one thing. I always like to have multiple roles. I think T is one of the first ones in a long time. We're like, nope, this is a troll that's going to kick an ass.
But nobody cares that T can kick ass. Everybody loves T because of his role playing.
Right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I hope that I don't actually know if that helped at all. But
I mean, the question was, how do you balance tactical combat and story-driven encounters? And we just like went off on the.
I don't try to balance them. I try to balance a good player experience that gives people chances to do things, but also makes good narrative sense.
I think
hopefully has a chance for an occasional sword fight.
I think the two things are different, right? How to balance tactical combat and story-driven versus how to handle a guy who's going to quit. Because they're not getting their way. Just talk to your people, I guess, in a generative way. But if they're not willing to like bend because the needs of the other group, then it's not much you can.
I mean, that's a really great point. If you talk to your players and you keep checking in with them, like, hey, how did this combat feel? And they give you feedback saying we'd like to do X, Y, Z. Then you can start incorporating that. Like, it's not just on you to read the room and guess. You have to get their input too, because all of you are having fun. And if you're the one that's in charge of creating all of these scenarios, you better, I assume that if you're going to spend hours crafting it and getting your stat blocks ready and your maps ready and all that, that you're providing the most fun experience that you can.
Yeah, let me say one final thing. The groups that I am playing with now, and the groups that I've been playing with the last few years, if I were to say, like, if the entire group wanted to be like hardcore technomancers and all they wanted to do was like do matrix runs, and that they formed a group to do matrix runs, and then I showed my ass up and I'm like, I want to be a crow shaman. For a fact, I know that every single person that I'm currently playing with would be like, okay, well then GM, like, how do we make this happen? How do we allow the Crow Shaman to be a part of our weird Technomancer team? And how do we take them along in our Matrix runs? I really, really would hesitate about playing with somebody who says, no, I need it my way.
Mhm.
And I'm not interested enough about I don't care about the other player enough to say it's okay that they want what they want, and I want to help them get what they want as well. So I guess just the coolest thing to do is to always, not as a GM, right, but as a player, always be concerned about what the other players want to do as well. You know what I mean? And just maybe don't play with people who don't care about you.
I also
Facts.
want to say though, and I just want to throw out there that if you're joining a gaming group and their way of playing and doing things just is not fun for you, and you tried and it's just not working out, you're not an asshole for
Right.
just leaving to do something else, as long as you're not an asshole about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's
just
nothing
don't-
wrong with that.
Yeah, don't. The other thing is true too, right? Like, as a player, if everybody else wants to do one thing and you're the guy who just needs their way, you don't need to do that. You can just find another group.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to that interview we had about improv with the improv teacher, with my improv professor, where it's, and I think it's a kind of a recurring theme with us whenever these questions get asked is the most important thing is to be worried and concerned about what making other people at the table look good, because if that's the case, right, like everything that you said is exactly what went down. Everyone was like, okay, well, this person wants to do this with their character, like this is what they've brought in, how do we help them do that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's so much fun when it's the person who wants to do the sword fight is the other team members are, all right, hey, this is your chance to have a sword fight.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Sick 'em loose. Yeah.